Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome back to this episode of Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians. And here is your host, Estella Monova, with another topic. And this topic is something that came up in my recent session with one of my amazing humanitarians, and she felt like she was being manipulated, and she wanted to know how to recognize and how to stop it and how to not be part of it. And therefore, we're discussing this, and I thought this might be happening to so many of us in our daily lives without us ever recognizing that this is happening, and how to, well, define it first, right? That's the important part. And then how to recognize that this is happening. Maybe some people are doing this to us, maybe we're doing it to them, or we're doing it to ourselves. And then why do we do this, and what to do if we don't like the way we are behaving, or we don't like others are behaving with us, or we don't like the way that we are behaving towards ourselves, right? So that's why stay tuned to answering these questions. And as we go along, I would love for you to keep answering your own questions in terms of how do you see it in your own life? What are the things you're doing, not doing, and how you can do differently next time. So let us dive into the first question of what it is, right? And the way that I have put it in the sentence so you can see it or recognize it very easily is when we think, I want you to behave the way that I want to. And if you don't, I will be upset, unhappy, whatever it is, angry, whatever it is, right? So basically, this is our message to the other person or other person's message to us, indirectly or directly. So whenever they want us to behave in the way that they think is right, and if we're not behaving that way, then them feeling pissed, unhappy, whatever it is. So manipulation is basically controlling someone's behavior for personal gain. And this might be also happening at work a lot of the times, even though the work that we do somehow is for all the people that we're serving. But in the end of the day, many of us may be wanting to do this for personal gain of feeling good about themselves, feeling good about themselves as a manager, as a successful person, or as a colleague, or as a professional. Or we might be doing this in our own lives or with our personal relationships as well on daily basis, right? So basically, we're wanting others to behave the way that we deem right, in quotes, or we deem good or approved. And if they don't, then we feel pissed. So now that we know what the manipulation is, how we want to recognize it in other people's. So in, oh, sorry, when, how do we recognize when we are doing it? So in other words, let's say that someone is trying to manipulate us, in how do we know that we're actually being part of that manipulation, even though that's not what we want to do, right? So the way that you recognize is that you do or behave the way that you're told, fearing the consequences, even if that's not what would you have done hadn't you be afraid of it, right? So let me repeat it again, even though maybe you can see it, maybe not until the end, but I will just repeat. This is so important, is that you behave or you do as you're told, fearing the consequences of whatever will happen if you don't do that thing, even if that's not what would you have done if you hadn't been afraid, right? So this is when you recognize that you're being part of the manipulation. Or you may also recognize when you are manipulating someone, right? Or intentionally or not intentionally, whichever the way. I don't think people intentionally manipulate others. I don't think, but still, if you want to recognize within your own behavior that this is what you're doing to the other person, to the other human, to the other person in your relationship, to the work colleague, whoever it is, or to your supervisor, supervisee, you will recognize it by how you expect them to behave the way that you want them to behave, and feeling pissed if they don't behave the way that you expect them, right? and therefore creating a situation where they feel like they have to do the way that you want them to do. Otherwise, they're afraid of you, right? So in my colleague's case, the one that we were discussing about is that where she feels manipulated is her a big boss is asking her to do something that she actually feels is not right to do, or it's not aligned with the organization's mission, organization's way of doing things. She feels like it's not aligned with that thing, right? But she is afraid of saying that or doing that. Like she's afraid of going against him, fearing the consequences of not getting contract extension. But what's amazing is that she did actually say to him that this is not right, this is not how we should be doing things, and therefore I don't think I will be doing that, right? That's an amazing way to stay out of manipulation. But I also understand that that's not how every one of us may have the courage to do, may uh, want to be able to recognize in time all of these things. Therefore, I wanted to bring this to your awareness and the consequences of us being part of the manipulation, and what happens when you keep being part of that manipulation, or when we keep manipulating others, the consequences of it. I want to highlight it here for you to then reflect and see if that's the way to go, right? So, but before we do that, I want to point out two main things that I think many of us don't recognize it, but this is crucial to how we want to go away from manipulation. And one of the ways that I see people do that we don't recognize is that when we manipulate ourselves, and of course, we may say, well, it's us, so we get to do whatever we want with ourselves, right? And depending on who you're talking to, your philosophy might be like, yes, I get to do whatever I want to myself, even infusing or imposing violence or verbal violence or even physical violence to ourselves. Some people may do that, but I would question and get help if that's what's happening. But for many of us, the things that we tend to manipulate with ourselves, we don't really recognize that that's what we're doing, is the one where we say, I have to behave this way, meaning I have to continue um, achieving and being the big achiever, being perfectionist, being the great worker that works to death, or whatever it is, because that's what's expected of me or other expect of me, and otherwise I will not be satisfied with myself. I will not be happy with myself because um, I will punish myself, and I'm afraid of punishing myself, and therefore I just keep doing this, even though I recognize that's not what I want to keep doing it in a long term. And that's not how I want to be living my life, but I feel like I can't really get myself to the place where I don't need to prove anymore, where I don't need to punish myself for doing things wrong or whatever it is. And we just become like our own manipulators of, if you are doing the things right, then you are rewarded and you are a good person or you're a good professional or whatever. But if things are not going well, then you are not a good professional. We punish ourselves. We say we don't deserve this and we're that. And that's how we try to control ourselves to the point that we feel like we can't really continue going this way. But at the same time, we feel like we don't know the alternative, right? We fear that the alternative is we just be lazy and do not do anything, and we'll be just this people who are just on the streets, and I don't know what the image of alternative we have. So therefore, we just keep feeling like we have to put ourselves into this standard or into this imaginary person that will have to be this person. And if we're not, we're afraid of our own judgment, we're afraid of our own punishment, we're afraid of our own blame, and we can't handle that. And therefore, we keep doing things that we actually don't want to do, and we recognize it's not healthy to ourselves. So, And the other way that I also see how we manipulate ourselves is that we say, well, I want to actually go for this dream, or I want to be in this type of relationship, I want to live in this place, or whatever the desires that we have. And then we suppress ourselves with our own fears, with our own judgment of how the good person wouldn't be doing this, or the good spouse wouldn't be doing this, or whatever the other thing that we bring the judgment to ourselves, and then we manipulate ourselves into being in the situation we don't want to be, but we fear our own judgment of the alternative. Do you see how messed up we can get sometimes? I am one of them that I used to do. So then we come to the why we do this, right? And the simple explanation is that I keep like talking about it, but I want to talk about it again. Is the simple explanation of the reason why we do it is because we believe that our happiness, our success, our whatever the emotion depend on other people's behavior. That's like the simplest way I can put it, right? In other words, I can only be happy, a great manager, a great professional, if my supervisees do all the things that I want them to do, be harmonious and never question me and always make me feel good, then they're good. And if they question, they don't do the things that I want to, they want to discuss with me, they want to discuss in ways that I don't approve, then they're not good professionals, then I must not be a good professional. And then we get into the whole thing of how do we get them to behave the way we want to so that we can feel good about ourselves, right? And it happens so oftentimes. I mean, even sometimes I catch myself doing it and I'm like, that's not how I want to be. That's not who I want to be. Yet my brain is so trained and so like it has been trained from the childhood of how my parents behaved and how in the adulthood how I continued behaving, how I continued being around people who behave that way. And therefore it just feels like a natural thing that I do. And then I have to catch myself. I have to shake myself and say, is this who you want to be? Right? So the truth though is that our emotions depend on ourselves, and our emotions of how other people behave again depend on ourselves, because other people get to behave the way they do, and then how we interpret it, how we perceive it depend on us. And oftentimes we want to interpret it as a way to say, well, you better behave this way, otherwise I'll be mad. But then ask yourself the question, is that how you want to really behave and treat the other adults? Right? Maybe we do that with our children, or maybe we do that, I don't know, with certain family members, even though maybe that's something we should consider whether we want to keep doing it. But especially at work where we have other adults who have their own ideas, who have their own ways of seeing things. And then we just want to keep believing that, well, if you don't behave the way I think you should, I will be frustrated, I will be disappointed, and I don't like myself when I'm frustrated and disappointed, so you better behave to make me happy, right? Even when I'm saying this, I feel like that's not how many of us want to be or choose to be. But I think because it's so ingrained in so many of us that we just continue doing that, even though we know that other people behave the way they want to, and then we get disappointed, and then we sit in our disappointment a lot, and then we don't like the other person for behaving that way, and we resent them, and then we just have a lot of emotions we actually didn't need to even create had we thought, wait a minute, actually my emotions depend on me, and whatever the way they behave, there must be a reason for it. And even if I don't understand the reason, do I really want to be disappointed? Right? This is something that for every one of us to consider, because the consequences can be something we don't like. And I want to get to that. So the best solution to not participating in manipulations, or even if others are doing it, or manipulating ourselves, or when we keep manipulating others, right? The best way to, or the antidote to manipulation is when we keep choosing to be who we are, right? Intentionally, if necessary, because if the natural way doesn't really come naturally because we haven't practiced that way, then being who we are intentionally, choosing to be who we are or who we want to be intentionally, and then doing what we believe, what we think is the right thing to do, or the good thing to do, or the just thing to do, or whatever, based on our knowledge, based on how we feel, right? Even if it means other people get hurt, or other people get unhappy, other people get happy, other people are approving, disapproving, whatever their reaction is. Because the alternative, if we don't do this, is this. At least I want to highlight 4 of them. There are many other alternative, the consequences. The alternative of participating and keep being in the manipulation or keep manipulating, the alternative is we keep making the other person right, or we keep making ourselves right in controlling others, or we keep making other person right in controlling us, which I don't think we want to, honestly. I don't think we want to be controlled by others. Equally, I don't think we want to control others either. It's just that many of us have just learned so much to do this that we don't even recognize that this is not what we want to do. And we continue supporting them, their manipulative behavior. We continue supporting our manipulative behavior, right? We keep them we keep making them powerful, and we keep making ourselves powerless if we are on the receiving end of manipulation. If we are on the side that we are manipulating others, then we keep making them powerless. We keep making ourselves powerful at the cost of them feeling powerless, right? And that's, again, I don't think we want to do that. We also never get to learn to trust ourselves if we keep participating in the manipulation of others, right? If we keep letting others manipulate us, then we just never learn to trust ourselves and our judgment. And therefore, we just keep feeling like, oh, they must be right, or they must be this. And we never get to bring our views, our positions of what we think is to consider. So we lose the diversity of opinions, of viewpoints. We don't even create to show our opinions. We don't even learn to express them in the way that we want to. We don't even maybe form them. And what the consequences of that is that we continue contributing to the exclusive society and excluding ourselves from that society. And that's, I think, is the biggest tragic result of manipulation, is where we take ourselves out of it by fearing not to say anything, fearing not to go against someone, or fearing not to say the things that we actually think should be done. We just don't say that, we just don't voice it, and therefore we just exclude ourselves. We create that exclusive environment where only certain opinions have the right to be there, and our opinions don't count, or our way of seeing things don't count. And it's all because of our own fear of disapproval, our own fear of them getting mad if we say it. And that way, we don't contribute to inclusive society that many of us want, inclusive and just society, fair, equal society where other views, other opinions are heard, have space, even if everyone thinks it's not the right thing to do, or even if it's not the right behavior, whatever it is. But if we believe that that's how we see, that's how we think, and we want to also part of that conversation equally, part of that solution equally, part of that discussion equally, then we need to trust ourselves to be there and voicing what we think, even if we're afraid the other person will be upset, even if we're afraid our boss is upset, or even if they are happy to hear it, whatever it is, irrespective of how they think and how they want us to behave, we got to show who we are and what we think about that situation to create that inclusive society, right? And that can only happen if we recognize when we are manipulating others or when we are participating in others' manipulation and being just allowing them to manipulate us, right? And if we don't want that to happen, then we need to start recognizing, we need to start realizing that we get to be who we are and we get to do what we think is the right thing, what we think is the good thing at the time of our knowledge and how we feel. Even though maybe later it turns out different, then we will, of course, have the um, freedom also to say or apologize or say, this is not how I thought it would be, or whatever it is, but still having that, giving ourselves that opportunity to not to be part of this manipulation or not allow ourselves to manipulate others or ourselves, but rather being honest, trusting, open to see what is it that we have and how we want to contribute in the world. So, my dears, if you want to work on this, absolutely come coach with me. I would love to get you all the coaching that you need to get to the place where you feel like you're not allowing anyone to manipulate you. You're not being part of that, and you're also not doing that to yourself so that you can be the person you want to and doing things that you want to in life. So have a beautiful weekend. I'll speak to you very soon.